Pastor Jim Schibsted, and I'd like to welcome you to Encouragement for Today. I'm so happy that John Mclees, a friend of mine for 50 years, is going to share with us. We're up here in Montana, and he was branding cattle a couple days ago and snow skiing and all kinds of things, but he's come through some difficult times, and it's a wonderful story of recovery. And John, why don't you share your heart with us for the next couple of minutes?
Well, I appreciate it, Jim. You know, I'm so grateful to be here. Like I was sharing earlier, you know, I am grateful alcoholic and stuff, recovering alcoholic. I'm grateful for today, and part of my life is I learned a long time ago from original sponsor and stuff on that, how important, you know, one day at a time is and stuff, and taking it, just really being conscious of all the gifts that I've been given through my recovery and through my walk or journey, you know, to this day and stuff. Been through some interesting times, I guess you'd kind of say, you know, whether it was that time went through the ice of the river and the pickup and stuff, and ended up underwater and couldn't get out. Finally got out of that, you know, through the grace of God and stuff. I really believe and stuff, you know, on that time, and that's been many years ago. That was actually before I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff, and had an opportunity to walk with that, you know, through all my trials and tribulations, you know. I guess I've gone through 2 divorces and stuff, you know, and part of those times, and I think with the help and support of sponsors and people in the program and stuff on that, I've been able to be sober today, you know, and free of alcohol. And
how many years has it been now, John?
Well, it's been 42 years.
Wow,
you know,
it's quite a run.
I was sharing that the other day at a meeting there about that it's been 15,125 days, and I think sometimes, you know, how can it be 15,000? How does that be? But it's for me, and what I believe and stuff, it's been through the grace of God and the support of just like people like you, Jim, and stuff, and your father is what, you know, it's always gave me. I used to come up here, and that, you know, that's been 40 years ago. I used to come up here, and some of the experiences that we walked through, and part of what life is given us and stuff there too. It's partly of learning that to live on life's terms, you know. It's not giving up on it, you know, and one of the close friends had taught me years ago about, he said, don't, you know, not about getting up in the morning and, oh, I don't have this, or I wish she would be doing that, or you know, I want to be someplace else. But like he said, get up and write 10 things down that you're grateful for today. Just, you know, not to get up and saying, oh, what am I got to do today, but just, you know, I'm alive. I'm what I use in the morning, a lot of it, I'm sober. I wake up, I know where I'm at, you know, and I look out and I see the sun shining and stuff, you know, with that, and those things about just being grateful for today, and it, I guess, leads into that last little, I call it episode, or part of my journey, when I was out selling a horse and stuff, and ended up, I come off the horse and ended upside down, landed flat, and it actually knocked me out, you know. And I was telling Jim about that. I woke up and I could see the clouds going over, and instead of the old typical way of jumping up and hoping that, you know, part of what life is, you know, that nobody's seen me do that, and then yet got up and went back to the house and ended up selling the horse. The guy loved the horse, you know, and become good friends. He's a good Christian. You know, it's how, what this program is given me is so many. I was saying that the other night. My family keeps growing, you know. But anyway, and then that happened, and
they airbagged you too.
And then, 2.5 months later, I went in to get my cholesterol checked, you know, that yearly checkup a little bit, and I like I said to her, I said, you know, maybe I need to get honest with you. You know, that part of that rigor for any of us, you know, is that rigorous honesty. And she took me back in and sent me to Livingston. It was about 40 miles in there, and said, I don't want you to leave there until I call. And she called and said they were moving me into the emergency room, and I thought, I'm not no big deal, and walked in there, and that doctor, he said, you know, you're lucky to be standing here alive.
Yeah.
And I looked at him like, what do you mean on that? And I was worried about how I was going to get to Billings there, and because they said they were going to take me there, and he said about to land, and helicopter landed, and I was excited to get on it because I hadn't flown since back in the 70s when I was in the service. And anyway, I ended up in Billings that afternoon, and they did that first surgery and opened it up. And then that next morning, he came in, and it hadn't done what they wanted, because what the CAT scan showed was my right ventricle was completely filled with blood and stuff, and the brain was actually over a little bit of center on it, and how serious it was. It was. And so then that next day, he came in that morning, and you could see it just didn't do what they were trying to do. And so then that went in for another bigger surgery. They drilled 3 more holes through. He always called he said my skull was awful hard-headed, and I said, well, I've been told I've been hard-headed about things all my life, you know. So anyway, they went in and drilled 3 more holes, and went in and put that shunt in, and that was on that next afternoon. And then that night, and he said it was working, you know, with that. And then at that night there, about midnight, I can remember kind of coming to and looking, and it was completely white, and I was calling for the nurses, and I couldn't get anybody to come, and I didn't know what to do, and then finally I know I talked to the Lord, you know, on that. He appeared, and I didn't know what to do, you know, that same thing. I've always, all my life, I've always tried to figure out what to do, but I remember him saying, you're not coming yet. You know, I'm not finished with you yet. You know, there's more to your journey that I want you to be part of, you know, and be here. I think it's about being here right today, you know, with Jim, and I love the Lord. The Lord has blessed me with my life. I'm it's like he was joking a little bit ago about how blessed, how healthy I am. You know, I healed up so fast. You know, it got that off and healed up, and I mean, I'm free of anything. You know, I don't take any medications or anything else, and I'm healthy. I love life. You know, sometimes I whine a little bit about you know, this or that, and then yet I go back to that, thinking about the things that I'm grateful for. It's just it's about like life right now. I hear the water behind me, and I think I was talking about too of being conscious of what this, even that one old sponsor taught me about. You know, he said put your hands out and look at them and realize that's where you are, is right now, right today, with that part of that story that I share at times too, is those 2 days we can't do anything about, you know, is yesterday or tomorrow, and really live today, you know.
You know, one thing that really impressed me, John, is like this morning you journal every day, and you have this things you're grateful for, and boy, it's just such a blessing, and it's been good to hear John's story. And I just wanted to say thank you, John, for sharing, but also some of you may be struggling with addictions right now, and just realize there's hope. I mean, John's life was turned around. He's been sober 42 years, or 15,000 some days, whatever. And we just thank you, John, for sharing today. And just want to thank all of you for tuning in, and God bless you, and have a great time as you think about what John has just shared with us.
And partly what I always say, remember, and everybody will look at me and like, remember what? And I say, keep looking up.
Okay.
Don't look down, look up. You know?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Good word.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.